A contingent of over 35 South African business representatives are in Davos to sell the country as an investment destination. The team is being led by the head of Cabinet's economic cluster, Mamoloko Kubai. This year's meeting is the first in person since the advent of COVID-19. For more on Davos, I am joined by Annabelle Bishop. She's a group economist at Investec. Thank you very much, Annabelle, for your time here on All Angles. Now, of course, the first thing South Africa said in Davos is that the country is open for business. But can we really say that with the load shedding happening every single day?
Yes, well, that's one of the points, isn't it? And of course, that's greatly concerning, along with, of course, the fact that we're facing the difficulties on the rails, the ports, and of course on the roads in terms of transport. South Africa has seen a huge commodity boom globally, but has not been able to take part fully over the past several months because of these lack of capacity that you mentioned.
And you know what's painful for a lot of South Africans is that we are a country that is resilient, but most of the things that are said about us that are bad, it's self-inflicted things.
It is very difficult. If you look at who's spearheading the delegation, Minister Mamoloko Kubai, she obviously will be talking to these points as she's the Minister of Human Settlement about development in South Africa. And I think it's quite key to note that some of the points they're going to be bringing up is also to reassure investors after the very severe action we saw last year, the riot action, just having a look at the points now, and of course unpacking government's priorities for supporting higher levels of economic growth through areas such as infrastructure and industrial growth. And of course that would include improving electricity capacity, as you mentioned, but also of course as well transport capacity, but really just outlining commitment to high economic growth through fast implementation of structural reforms through Operation Blue Land Lela. And of course you know that on Friday night Standard & Poor's actually gave us an improvement on our outlook. We got a positive outlook, which indicates that they expect us to make further progress on these reforms. So I think that's a difficulty we face at the moment. Not enough progress has been made, and of course that's why it will be difficult at Davos to talk to investors about coming to invest in South Africa, because they want to see that progress has been made and these capacity constraints have been overcome.
And it's not the first time that a ratings agency actually gives us a positive outlook this year alone. I guess it's because they're seeing some of the things that government is doing in fighting corruption, arrests in VBS, the state capture report going to the president, etc. But what's some of the pushback that Mamoloko Kubai should expect from people who are likely to show interest in investing here?
Well, I think, there's worries globally. And, if we have a look at financial markets, we have a look at investors, there's risk off at the moment because of the worries from the Russian-Ukraine conflict. It'll cause global economic growth to slow down. Of course, are the facts as well that financial conditions have tightened in markets. That means higher interest rates, one of the factors. But also, of course, as well, very high inflation. And, of course, also discussed at the Davos meeting will be climate change as well. So there's many, many different factors. And I think, one of the key points really is that if we actually have a look at these threats to global economic growth, it does raise risk aversion. And that, of course, you see in the rand's weakness of recent months, but also, of course, as well, investors being more wary of where they actually put their money. So those are portfolio flows I was talking about that cause rand weakness, but of course you and I are also talking about fixed investment, into South Africa. Look, I think, a positive is that the German Chancellor is in South Africa at the moment, and of course Germany looking to expand its investment in Africa, particularly in South Africa, trade with South Africa. And that's one of the factors I think we see coming out of this Russia-Ukraine conflict. Of course, as well, we also see some interesting points being made about hyper-globalization, huge trade amongst countries that has been damaged by COVID-19, by the supply chain blockages, of course, high inflation, high interest rates also having an impact as well. But this really, talks to perhaps more localization as well, but also change in trade patterns. And of course, that's something that, we've really seen the interest coming from the German Chancellor. But of course, as well, there may be other countries, looking perhaps to swing somewhat towards South Africa, given the difficulties we've been facing over the past couple of years with these multiple crises.
Will they also, speak to her about what's been happening locally in the country besides the July unrest, etc.? There was also, your Operation Dudula that a lot of people here already were fearing would actually evoke xenophobic attacks, etc. Should we expect that those type of questions will also be asked of the minister?
Well, First and foremost, they tend to talk more generally, and I think climate change being very high up on the agenda will be something that there will be particular focus on. You know, given that the Minister of Human Settlements is going, it's quite telling, and of course the tragedy we saw in KZN with the extreme floods, you know, from April. So these will be really key factors on the agenda. And of course, looking globally at countries, what are they doing to try and impede the dramatic climate change and the devastation it causes on human life, but also, of course, human livelihoods. So those, I think, will be really key issues. There obviously may be some concerns about the as you said, a risk of a rise in xenophobia because government's focusing on looking to switch, perhaps, the jobs towards more South Africans opposed to foreign nationals. In other words, to actually get more in line with their quotas. But of course, as well, there's definitely going to be commitment to deepening economic cooperation within the continent globally and stimulating trade. And of course, that talks to the Africa free trade commitment as well. So I think the point is probably going to be a huge number of areas that they'll be focused on. But I wouldn't dismiss climate change. I really think that's going to be one of the key areas.
Well, thank you so much, Annabelle, for speaking to us here on All Angles. It's going to be interesting what the minister comes back with from Davos. That was Annabelle Bishop. She's a group economist at Investec.